At 400 meters below the ocean, a submarine suddenly loses power. No engine, no control, just dead weight, sinking. Inside, 44 crew members realize something terrifying. They are not drowning. They are falling toward a depth where the ocean will crush the entire ship in less than a second. And when investigators finally discovered what happened, they realized the crew never had a chance. The South Atlantic Ocean is notoriously violent. Mariners refer to these latitudes as the Roaring Forties. Storms here create enormous walls of water that easily batter surface ships. To survive, a submarine simply dives beneath the weather. Down in the quiet deep, the chaos of the surface completely disappears. In November 2017, the ARA San Juan was navigating these exact waters. It was a diesel-electric submarine carrying 44 crew members. They were on a routine patrol, hunting for illegal fishing vessels near the Argentine coast. Among the crew were seasoned veterans and Argentina's first female submarine officer. They were highly trained professionals who understood the physical risks of the deep ocean. But the San Juan was not a new machine. It was a TR-1700 class submarine, originally built in the 1980s. To keep it in service, the military had recently put it through a heavy midlife upgrade. The process required cutting the thick steel pressure hull completely in half. They replaced the engines and the battery banks and then welded the ship back together. In the deep ocean, a submarine is only as strong as its weakest weld. If that steel fails, the water will exploit the weakness instantly. The crew trusted their machine, but the ocean was about to test it. A severe storm was brewing on the surface. The submarine was running low on electrical power and needed to recharge. Diesel-electric subs must run their engines to charge their battery banks, but diesel engines require oxygen to function. To get it, the San Juan had to approach the violent surface and raise a snorkel. This hollow pipe pulls fresh air from the outside world directly into the engine room. It is a highly routine procedure, but heavy waves were violently crashing over the conning tower. As the snorkel broke the surface, something catastrophically went wrong. A mechanical valve failed to close in time. Cold seawater bypassed the safety systems and poured directly into the ventilation pipe. It cascaded downward, pooling into the forward battery compartment. Mixing salt water with heavy industrial batteries creates an immediate dangerous chemical reaction. A short circuit sparked in the dark. A fire ignited inside the enclosed steel. For a submarine crew, an electrical fire is the ultimate nightmare. There is nowhere to run. The oxygen is strictly limited and toxic smoke fills the tight corridors in seconds. The crew of the San Juan fought the fire in the battery pit. They managed to extinguish the flames and isolate the damaged cells, but the damage to their primary power supply was already done. The captain sent an encrypted transmission to Naval Command, reporting the battery failure. He assured them the situation was currently under control. They were going to dive deep beneath the storm and slowly make their way back to base using the remaining power. At 7:30 a.m., the ARA San Juan slipped beneath the crashing waves. That was the last time anyone ever heard from the ARA San Juan. The radio went completely dead. When the submarine failed to arrive at its scheduled checkpoint, the Argentine Navy panicked. They launched a massive international search and rescue operation. Dozens of ships and aircraft from 18 different countries flooded the South Atlantic. They dropped sonar buoys into the freezing water, listening for distress signals. They were hoping to hear the rhythmic banging of a wrench against the steel hull. That is the universal acoustic signal of a trapped crew begging for rescue. But the ocean offered absolutely nothing. Days turned into a week. The theoretical oxygen limit of the submarine was rapidly approaching. If they were resting intact on the shallow bottom, they were slowly suffocating in the dark. During the search, several false leads gave the families agonizing hope. Search planes detected brief satellite pings. They found empty life rafts bobbing in the stormy sea. But every single lead turned out to belong to other commercial fishing vessels. The San Juan was simply gone. The families of the 44 crew members waited at the naval base, desperate for a miracle. But cases like this don't offer miracles. And if this is why you watch, subscribe to Evidence Zero, because what investigators found next was much worse than suffocation. An international monitoring agency known as the CTBTO was watching the ocean. They use highly classified hydrophones to listen for illegal nuclear tests around the globe. These deep-water microphones are incredibly sensitive. They reviewed their acoustic data from the exact morning the submarine vanished. They found a severe anomaly. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a mechanical failure or a hull scraping against the sea. It was a violent, sudden release of acoustic energy. It was a short, sharp spike in the data. They had captured the exact sound of a catastrophic implosion. The San Juan didn't run out of oxygen while waiting for rescue. It had been violently crushed by the ocean. With the forward battery system heavily damaged, the submarine likely suffered a total electrical failure. Without power, the hydroplanes lock up. Without forward momentum, a submarine loses all its lift. It becomes thousands of tons of dead weight. It began to sink. Inside the control room, the crew would have immediately realized what was happening. They were caught in a completely uncontrolled descent. The deck would have tilted sharply downward, throwing men against the bulkhead. They would have scrambled in the dark to blow the emergency ballast tank. This procedure forces high-pressure air into the tanks to rapidly create buoyancy. But without electrical power to open the main valves, the heavy steel simply continued to fall. The depth gauge would have started spinning rapidly, 100 meters, 200 meters. The temperature inside the hull would have plummeted. Modern submarines are equipped with specialized escape suits. If a sub gets stuck on the bottom in shallow water, the crew can swim to the surface. But those suits are only rated to keep a human alive for roughly 200 meters. As the San Juan plummeted past 300 meters, those escape suits became completely useless. The crew knew they had crossed the point of no return. At this depth, the physical warnings begin. The enormous pressure of the ocean starts to compress the steel hull inward. The metal groans loudly. It makes sharp popping noises that echo through the entire ship. Every sailor on board knew exactly what that sound meant. They were passing their maximum safe operating depth, and they were still falling. The psychological weight of this descent is almost impossible to comprehend. There was no panic that could save them. There was no emergency lever left to pull. They just had to stand in the freezing dark, listening to the ocean slowly break their ship apart. They were falling toward a very specific mathematical number. Crush depth. This is the point where the steel simply can no longer fight the weight of the water. For the San Juan, that depth was roughly 600 meters. When the submarine crossed that invisible line, the end was instantaneous. At that depth, the water pressure is over 800 pounds per square inch. When the hull finally failed, it didn't just spring a leak. It collapsed inward at supersonic speed. The sudden compression of the air inside the submarine was so violent that it briefly ignited. The entire vessel was destroyed in roughly 40 milliseconds. To understand how incredibly fast that is, you have to look at human biology. It takes the human brain about 100 milliseconds to process a pain signal. The implosion happened more than twice as fast as the body's physical ability to feel it. 1 millisecond, they were standing in the dark, bracing for the end. The next millisecond, their reality was completely erased. There was no drowning. There was no prolonged suffocation in the deep. The ocean simply deleted them. The immense acoustic shockwave rippled through the water, leaving nothing behind but silence. The Argentine Navy knew the submarine had imploded, but they still didn't know exactly where it was. The ocean floor in that region is a chaotic landscape of deep canyons and volcanic ridges. It took exactly 1 year of relentless searching to find an advanced deep-sea robotic search ship named the Seabed Constructor was hired for the final attempt. On the very last day of their contracted search, their sonar hit a metallic contact. They sent remote cameras down into a dark ravine 900 meters below the surface. The lights pierced the black water, revealing the shattered remains of the San Juan. It was not in one piece. The sheer violence of the implosion had torn the heavy steel apart. The pressure hull was crushed inward, mangled like a piece of tinfoil. The bow section, the sail, and the heavy propellers were scattered widely across the seafloor. The discovery provided technical closure for the military. They knew where the ship was, and the acoustic data confirmed exactly how it died. But for the families, the pictures of the destroyed wreckage offered very little comfort. The ocean had taken 44 people and locked them in an unreachable grave. The recovery of the physical bodies was completely impossible. The pressure at 900 meters had already claimed everything inside. The depths are simply too extreme, and the wreckage too unstable for any extraction effort. The government made the painful, unavoidable decision to leave the site exactly as it was. The ARA San Juan would remain at the bottom of the Atlantic forever. It is now a permanent iron tomb. They found the scattered pieces. They recorded the fatal sound, but the fear of that falling dark will always remain.